There comes a sacred moment in the stillness of the night, when the world sleeps and heaven leans close to the earth. It is between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. that the soul feels a quiet stirring, a gentle awakening, a call not from the clock, but from eternity itself. If you have ever found yourself awake at these hours, know this: it is not coincidence. It is a summons. The divine is reaching out to you. In this sacred hour, your mind is clear, unburdened by the noise of the day. The clutter of worry, fear, and confusion falls silent. This is the hour when God speaks ideas into receptive hearts, when He reveals the unseen path to those who are willing to listen. The greatest transformations do not begin in daylight. They begin in the secret conversations between your soul and your Creator while the world lies asleep. When you rise at this hour, do not rush. Do not ask merely for what you want. Seek to understand what God wants to bring forth through you. Pray not only for blessings, but for clarity. Ask, Lord, what is my next step? What must I release? And what must I rise into? For every calling comes with an instruction, and every vision requires obedience before fulfillment. The prayer of these hours is not one of repetition, but revelation. This time is not meant for everyone, but for those who are ready to grow beyond comfort and into purpose. When you respond to this divine call, you train your spirit to hear the language of destiny. You open your mind to inspired ideas, the kind that change not only your life, but the lives of those around you. Many of the world's most powerful thinkers, creators, and visionaries have met their inspiration in these early hours, guided by the quiet whisper of the infinite. So when you awaken between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., do not turn away. Rise, light a candle, or simply sit in silence. Feel the presence that calls your name. Pray for understanding, for wisdom, for courage to act upon the guidance you receive. Let your words be few and your faith be great. The silence will speak. The answers will unfold. Remember this: your purpose is not discovered in chaos, but in communion. The world may offer you distractions, but God offers you direction. These early hours are not a disruption of sleep. They are an invitation to awaken. Answer that call, and you will find that your life begins to align with the rhythm of the divine plan. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., heaven opens a door. Those who rise and listen do not return the same. For in that sacred stillness, God is not only calling you, He is preparing you. The hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. have long been recognized as a mysterious and powerful space in the rhythm of human existence. It is the time when night begins to loosen its hold and dawn quietly prepares to reveal itself. The world is still. The air feels different, and there is a silence that almost hums with unseen energy. This period is not just a gap between darkness and light. It is a divine window, a sacred interval where heaven and earth draw closer. In these hours, the human mind is stripped of noise, and the spirit becomes its most alert, making it the perfect moment for communion with the divine. Science tells us that during this period, the brain enters its most reflective state. The conscious mind, which all day is busy analyzing, judging, and reacting, finally surrenders its grip. The subconscious mind, the deeper well of intuition and faith, rises to the surface. This shift is not random. It is part of the divine design of creation. The mind's stillness at this time allows thoughts from a higher source to penetrate more clearly. Ideas that could not be heard in the chaos of daylight now arrive like whispers in the quiet. The heart, no longer distracted by the demands of the world, begins to hear what it could not before. The subtle voice of purpose, the calm direction of truth. Many spiritual traditions have acknowledged this window as sacred. Ancient seekers would rise before dawn to meditate, pray, or listen. They understood that the hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. carry an energy that is unlike any other, an energy that purifies thought, heightens awareness, and prepares the soul for renewal. This is not superstition, it is spiritual science. The human body, mind, and spirit align most deeply with divine frequency when the external world is silent. At this hour, your prayers rise with greater clarity, your faith resonates more deeply, and your mind becomes a clean slate for divine instruction. If you awaken during this time, it is not always by accident. Many feel an unexplainable pull to open their eyes, not from restlessness, but from a stirring within. It is as if something greater than you is knocking gently at the door of your awareness. You may not hear words, but you will feel a sense of presence, a calm assurance that you are being invited to listen. The divine does not always call with thunder or command with force. Sometimes the call comes softly, disguised as insomnia or a sudden awakening. Those who recognize it and respond discover that these quiet moments hold the keys to guidance, healing, and revelation. The atmosphere of these hours is not just external, it is internal. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., your heart and spirit reach a frequency of surrender. You are more open to inspiration because you are not defending yourself with logic or resistance. Your fears lose power, your ego softens, and your faith begins to breathe. This is the window through which divine ideas flow, ideas that will shape your next season of life. Great leaders, thinkers, and inventors have testified to receiving their most profound insights in these early hours. It is as though creation itself is whispering solutions to those who are willing to be still enough to hear them. When you rise during this sacred window, you are not merely waking from sleep. You are stepping into alignment. You are aligning your mind with clarity, your heart with peace, and your spirit with divine timing. The prayer you offer at this hour carries a weight and purity that daytime distractions cannot dilute. You do not need to speak many words. Even your silent thoughts become prayer when offered in faith. What matters most is not how long you pray, but how open you are to receiving. The divine window is not only about talking to God. It is about allowing God to talk to you. This is also the hour when transformation begins in unseen ways. The power of this time is not only spiritual, but deeply psychological. When you consistently awaken and pray between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., you train your subconscious mind to believe in possibility, to listen for guidance, and to act in alignment with divine wisdom. Your inner world becomes ordered, and your outer world begins to reflect that order. Faith becomes not an abstract belief, but an active force guiding your decisions, shaping your habits, and molding your destiny. The divine window between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. is therefore not a superstition, but an invitation, a sacred rhythm woven into the structure of creation itself. It is a reminder that the universe is not random, that God is not distant, and that guidance is always available to those who are willing to listen in silence. The world belongs to those who know when to move, and those who move with divine timing move with power. In the quiet of these early hours, heaven speaks not in thunder, but in whispers. Those who listen rise, not by chance, but by calling. This is the hour of revelation, a sacred intersection between time and eternity, where the human spirit becomes most sensitive to divine influence. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the veil between the physical and spiritual realms thins, and the ordinary mind gives way to extraordinary awareness. It is during these hours that the voice of God often speaks, not in thunder or visible signs, but through subtle impressions, flashes of understanding, and quiet inner conviction. The world sleeps, but heaven does not. While others dream, the one who is awake in spirit becomes the receiver of divine transmission. Ideas, visions, and directions that are not born from reasoning, but revelation. When the divine seeks to communicate, it does not always use words, it uses awareness. In the stillness of this hour, a sudden insight may come to you. A thought so clear, so strong, that it pierces confusion like light through fog. These are not random thoughts. They are divine messages clothed in the language of intuition. The human mind, when purified of distraction, becomes a canvas upon which God paints visions of destiny. It is here that new beginnings are conceived. The blueprint of a higher purpose is revealed to those willing to listen in silence. Every great mission in history began with revelation. Before a leader moved, before a prophet spoke, before a thinker wrote, there was a divine encounter in the quiet. This is not a myth of religion, but a pattern of life. When the mind is uncluttered and the soul is attuned, the flow of inspiration increases. Revelation is not reserved for saints. It is available to every person who quiets the noise long enough to hear. The divine source does not favor one over another. It simply seeks a receptive vessel. When you awaken between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., you are being summoned to become that vessel. In these hours, revelation takes many forms. Sometimes it is a vision, a mental image of what could be. Sometimes it is a sentence that echoes in your heart, a knowing that will not let you go. Other times it is peace, a deep, inexplicable peace that replaces confusion, confirming that you are on the right path. The nature of revelation is not always dramatic often. It is gentle but unmistakable. It does not demand attention. It invites awareness. The more you respond to it, the more frequent and clearer it becomes. The key to experiencing revelation in these early hours is stillness. The world is designed to pull you outward, toward noise, speed, and distraction. Revelation pulls you inward, toward reflection, faith, and awareness. At 3 a.m., when everything external sleeps, the internal voice of wisdom awakens. You begin to understand not just what you are doing, but why you are doing it. You start to see patterns, connections, and divine timing in what once seemed random. This kind of understanding cannot be taught in classrooms or found in books. It must be received in silence. The hour of revelation is also the hour of alignment. When you receive divine insight, it brings your thoughts, emotions, and actions into harmony with a higher purpose. You stop striving and start flowing. You no longer chase opportunities. You attract them because your energy is synchronized with divine intention. This inner clarity gives you confidence, not born of arrogance but of assurance. The quiet certainty that you are moving according to a greater plan. And with that certainty comes strength. Fear loses its voice when revelation speaks. Revelation is not merely information, it is transformation. What you receive between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. is meant to be lived, not just understood. The insight you receive must become the instruction you obey. The divine does not speak to impress you but to equip you. Every vision requires action. Every message demands movement. When you act upon revelation, you demonstrate faith, and faith activates more revelation. It is a cycle of growth, a divine dialogue that expands with your obedience. Those who cultivate this hour as a sacred habit often find their creativity, intuition, and spiritual discernment expanding beyond measure. Ideas come effortlessly, solutions appear to complex problems, and decisions that once felt heavy become clear. You begin to walk in rhythm with divine timing, not ahead, not behind, but perfectly aligned. This is the essence of revelation. It positions you exactly where you need to be, when you need to be there. There is also a refinement that happens in this time. Revelation not only gives you vision, but purifies your motive. It tests your heart, asking whether you seek success for recognition or for purpose. It asks whether your desire is rooted in fear or in faith. The truth revealed in these hours is not always comfortable, but it is always liberating. To receive revelation is to be seen by the divine and shown who you truly are. It is both a mirror and a map, reflecting your inner condition and guiding your future direction. The hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. are therefore not merely moments of wakefulness. They are moments of awakening. It is the time when heaven deposits ideas into open minds, when destiny whispers to the willing, and when revelation flows like a river to those who thirst for meaning. To those who answer the call, these hours become a school of divine instruction, a classroom without walls, where wisdom descends like light and faith becomes understanding. Silence in the early morning hours holds a power that few understand and even fewer embrace. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., when the world lies in deep slumber, silence transforms from absence into presence. It becomes a living energy, a force that opens the soul to divine communication. The human mind, freed from the weight of daily noise, finds itself bathed in stillness. This stillness is not emptiness, it is fullness, the fullness of spiritual potential waiting to be awakened. In this sacred quiet, clarity is born, direction unfolds, and the strength to face life's battles is quietly renewed. When the body is at rest and the senses are subdued, the spirit rises to its highest awareness. It is in silence that one begins to perceive the subtle whispers of divine guidance. The voice of God does not compete with the world's volume. It speaks softly, so that only those who are still enough can hear. The noise of life, the opinions, the fears, the endless motion, often drowns out the gentle promptings that come from within. But in the deep hours of silence, when the external world fades away, the inner world comes alive. It is here that intuition strengthens and discernment sharpens, guiding the soul toward truth. Silence is a teacher. It does not explain with words, but reveals through understanding. In silence, one begins to see life with spiritual eyes, recognizing patterns, lessons, and divine timing that were once hidden by noise. This revelation does not come with fanfare. It emerges gently, like the dawn. The longer one sits in the stillness, the clearer the inner vision becomes. The answers that seemed elusive during the day often present themselves in the quiet of the early morning. It is not because new information appears, but because awareness deepens. Silence is not passive. It is the active stilling of chaos so that divine wisdom can rise. This silence is also a sanctuary, a place where burdens dissolve. In these hours, the heart finds room to breathe. The worries that felt heavy during the day lose their grip, and faith begins to rebuild its foundation. The silence does not erase the challenges of life, but it reminds you of your power to meet them with calm and clarity. It connects you to a source that is greater than fear, greater than uncertainty. In silence, you are reminded that strength is not loud, it is steady, unshaken, and deeply rooted in spiritual peace. There is a divine chemistry in these quiet moments. The mind slows, the heart steadies, and the body aligns with a natural rhythm of restoration. Silence rejuvenates more deeply than sleep. It nourishes the soul the way sunlight nourishes the earth. It prepares the mind to think clearly, the heart to love deeply, and the spirit to act wisely. Every moment spent in silence builds inner power, a strength that does not depend on circumstance, but flows from connection with the divine. The early morning silence also amplifies prayer. Words spoken in this stillness carry weight. They rise unhindered, free of distraction. Even unspoken prayers, the silent cries of the heart, echo in the spiritual realm. Silence becomes a vessel through which intention travels. The prayer of a silent heart can move more mountains than the loudest speech, because it is filled with focus and faith. When you pray in silence, you are not trying to convince heaven to hear you. You are aligning yourself to hear heaven. You begin to understand that communication with the divine is not about volume, but about vibration. Not about how much you say, but how present you are in the saying. In silence, strength is reborn. It is in these hours that courage is rekindled and vision restored. The world often confuses motion with progress, but real growth happens in stillness. A seed must rest in darkness before it can break through the soil. Likewise, Your spirit must rest in silence before it can emerge into purpose. Every quiet morning spent in communion with the divine plants invisible seeds of wisdom and confidence that will later bloom in your actions and decisions. This sacred stillness also purifies intention. In silence, you confront yourself, not as the world sees you, but as you truly are. You begin to notice the thoughts that clutter your mind, the fears that limit your potential, and the desires that may not serve your higher purpose. This confrontation is not judgmental, but liberating. It gives you the power to release what no longer aligns with your destiny. The silence of 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. becomes a mirror reflecting both your humanity and your divinity. To dwell in silence is to practice surrender, to trust that even when nothing seems to move, everything is being aligned. It is in this surrender that peace becomes power. You no longer fight to control every outcome, you learn to rest in faith. This rest does not mean inactivity but divine confidence. From this stillness you rise not empty, but charged, filled with insight, calm, and purpose. The strength that emerges from such silence is unshakable, because it is not borrowed from the world, it is drawn from the eternal source within. Thus, the silence between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. is not merely a pause in the day. It is the hidden engine of spiritual transformation. It clears the fog of confusion, restores inner order, and renews the strength to walk boldly in divine purpose. In that stillness, you are reminded that true power is quiet, true wisdom listens before it speaks, and true strength is born not in noise, but in sacred silence. The secret to transformation lies not merely in asking for what you desire, but in aligning yourself with what the divine desires to bring forth through you. Prayer, at its highest form, is not a list of requests, but a conversation of alignment. Most people approach prayer as an act of seeking something external, blessings, breakthroughs, or relief. Yet, the deepest power of prayer is not in the words you speak, but in the attunement of your spirit to divine instruction. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., when distractions fade and the heart becomes still, prayer transforms from petition into revelation. It ceases to be a monologue and becomes a partnership, a sacred exchange between human intention and divine purpose. When you pray for alignment rather than for outcomes, your entire perception of life begins to shift. You no longer chase answers, you attract them. You no longer beg for change, you become the change. Alignment means placing your thoughts, emotions, and actions in harmony with the rhythm of divine wisdom. In this state, even your desires evolve. What you once sought out of fear or lack transforms into what you now seek out of purpose and trust. The energy of your prayer changes from asking, "Why me?" to declaring, "Use me." In that moment, prayer stops being an escape from struggle and becomes the channel through which strength, direction, and creativity flow. True transformation is born from this kind of surrender. When you align with divine will, you begin to release your attachment to control. You no longer demand that life unfold according to your plan. Instead, you cooperate with the larger pattern that is always guiding you toward growth. The divine never withholds, it only waits for readiness. Many prayers appear unanswered, not because they are denied, but because the person praying is not yet aligned to receive. Alignment prepares the vessel for the blessing. When your inner frequency matches the intention of heaven, manifestation becomes effortless. This alignment requires a shift in consciousness, a movement from asking, "What do I want?" to asking, "What am I being called to become?" The moment you make that shift, your prayer evolves. It no longer flows from desperation but from devotion. You begin to realize that prayer is not a means to manipulate circumstances, but to transform consciousness. You stop praying for the mountain to move and start praying for the wisdom to climb it. This change in orientation brings power, because it awakens you to your divine role as a creator, not merely a seeker. The divine works through you, not just for you. The hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. are fertile ground for this kind of prayer, because the noise of ego is silent and the voice of truth is loudest. The heart in those hours is uncluttered, making it a perfect vessel for divine instruction. In the silence, ideas are born, clarity dawns, and purpose speaks. You may enter prayer seeking direction and rise from it with revelation. The guidance received in this state is not always logical, but it carries the unmistakable resonance of truth. It is not a whisper of wishful thinking, but a decree of destiny. The soul recognizes it instantly, because it comes from the same source that breathed it into being. When you align your prayer with divine will, even your struggles become sacred. Challenges are no longer punishments but preparations. You stop resisting what happens and begin to extract wisdom from it. In this awareness, suffering loses its sting, because you recognize that every obstacle is molding you into the person capable of carrying the blessing you asked for. You start to see divine timing not as delay but as protection, a sequence perfectly designed for your evolution. Alignment teaches you patience, not as waiting idly, but as trusting actively. To pray in alignment is to practice spiritual listening. It means you speak with intention and then fall silent with expectation. Many pray but few pause to hear. Yet, revelation lives in the pause. When you listen after you pray, you create space for divine response. The answer may come as an idea, a feeling, a scripture, or a sudden knowing. Sometimes it comes as a deep peace, a peace that says, "You don't need to worry, it's already done." In this way, prayer becomes a two-way conversation, one where you not only reach upward, but also allow wisdom to reach downward into your being. As you continue to align in prayer, you begin to notice transformation in subtle yet profound ways. Your reactions soften, your discernment sharpens. You no longer feel tossed by circumstances because you are anchored in divine flow. Even the way you see others changes, judgment fades, compassion grows, and gratitude deepens. The divine begins to express itself through your thoughts, words, and actions. Your presence becomes a prayer in motion, a living testimony of alignment. People around you may sense peace without knowing why, for alignment radiates energy that influences without effort. The secret of transformation through prayer is therefore found in willingness. The willingness to release the illusion of control, to let divine wisdom lead, and to trust that what unfolds is always for your good. When you stop praying merely for what you want and start praying for what God wants to do through you, you enter the highest form of co-creation. You begin to move in sync with destiny, not as a passenger, but as a partner. Your prayer becomes the bridge between heaven's vision and earth's manifestation, between your desire and divine design. And in that sacred balance, your entire being is transformed, not by force, but by flow. Faith becomes most alive in the quiet hours before dawn, when the noise of the world has faded, and only the whisper of the Spirit remains. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., when everything external sleeps, faith awakens. It is in these hours that the unseen becomes tangible and belief turns into an active force, shaping your reality. The distractions that weaken conviction during the day lose their grip, and the heart becomes sensitive to the gentle rhythm of divine presence. Faith, in its purest form, is not a feeling but a power, a conscious alignment with divine certainty. It is the awareness that, even when you cannot see what's ahead, something greater is already working on your behalf. These hours, bathed in stillness, are when that awareness burns brightest. When faith is active, you no longer wait for evidence. You live as though the evidence already exists. The early morning silence trains the soul in this discipline. It strips away doubt, for in the stillness there is nothing to rely on but trust. The mind cannot reason itself to peace, so it must surrender to faith. This surrender is not weakness, it is mastery. Mastery over fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. It is during these early hours that your spiritual muscles grow, not through comfort, but through quiet endurance. Every moment of stillness becomes an act of trust. Every whispered prayer a declaration that what you seek is already on its way. The atmosphere between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. is not just quiet, it is charged with spiritual potential. In that silence, faith becomes a bridge between what is and what will be. You begin to sense that the invisible world is more real than the visible one. You start to feel the presence of divine order, not through logic, but through a deep, peaceful knowing. The same stillness that silences fear also amplifies belief. It is as if creation itself pauses for you, allowing your faith to rewrite your inner world before the outer world adjusts accordingly. In these sacred hours, faith stops being an idea and becomes an experience, something felt, lived, and embodied. Faith at this hour is not passive waiting, it is active alignment. It is rising from your rest to affirm life's promise. It is the decision to pray, to meditate, or to sit in gratitude. Even when you feel uncertain, these small acts of devotion signal to the universe that you are ready to receive. You do not wait for inspiration, you become inspiration. You do not plead for light, you become the flame. Faith demands participation, not in frantic action, but in conscious agreement with divine will. When you act in faith during these hours, you invite heaven's energy into your day before it even begins. What makes faith so powerful in these early hours is its intimacy. This is not public faith or the faith of performance. It is private, raw, and deeply personal. It does not need to impress or convince. It simply exists. You might sit alone, feeling the quiet pulse of your heartbeat, and in that rhythm find proof that you are sustained by something eternal. The world has not yet awoken to its noise, and in that sacred pause, you realize you were never alone. The same presence that governs galaxies watches over you in the silence. Such awareness births courage. You rise from that moment not with loud confidence, but with unshakable assurance. Faith, when nurtured in silence, becomes resilient. It is no longer swayed by appearances or circumstances. Daylight may bring challenges, but the heart fortified in the still hours of morning cannot be easily shaken. This kind of faith does not crumble when faced with delay. It understands divine timing. It does not panic when plans shift. It trusts divine order. When cultivated in those early hours, faith evolves from mere hope into inner authority. You begin to command your environment not through force, but through conviction. Mountains move not because you shout at them, but because your energy has aligned with the one who made them. In this sacred time, faith also refines perception. You start to see differently. What once appeared as obstacles now look like opportunities for divine demonstration. You begin to sense meaning in every movement, even in stillness. You understand that divine intelligence is not idle. It is weaving purpose into every thread of your experience. Faith sharpens intuition and calms the restless mind, allowing you to interpret life through the lens of divine order rather than human fear. It teaches you to trust the process even when you cannot trace it. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., faith becomes a dialogue between your spirit and the infinite. The divine whispers promises, and you respond with belief. This exchange strengthens your vibration, creating a spiritual momentum that carries into the day. You no longer move from worry but from wisdom. You begin to walk, speak, and act as one who knows, not one who merely hopes. This subtle but powerful difference defines the lives of those who lead with faith. In these hours, faith also performs its quiet miracles. It heals doubts, dissolves confusion, and restores courage. It turns restlessness into rest and fear into focus. It is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it simply plants the seed of peace that grows throughout the day. Every person who answers this early call is reminded that faith is not something you summon when things go wrong. It is the state of being that keeps things aligned before they go wrong. The morning hours are not just a time of prayer, they are a workshop of faith, where belief is forged, tested, and strengthened. Thus, in the stillness before sunrise, faith becomes action, vibration, and creation. It is no longer a distant ideal, but a living force shaping every thought and step. When the world sleeps, faith awakens, and those who nurture it in the sacred hours rise, not with mere ambition, but with divine authority. Every person is called, yet few respond to that inner summons that arrives in the quiet hours of the night. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the divine extends an invitation, a whisper to the soul that says, "Rise, there is more for you." This is not a call that comes with noise or pressure. It is subtle, personal, and deeply spiritual. It is the kind of calling that does not demand your attention through fear, but draws you through a deep sense of recognition. You feel it not in your ears, but in your heart. An inner stirring that reminds you that your life holds meaning far beyond survival or routine. Those who awaken and respond to this divine call step into a journey of higher purpose, where wisdom deepens, courage expands, and partnership with the divine becomes a way of life. The divine call is not limited to the chosen few. It echoes in every soul willing to listen. Yet, many ignore it because it does not arrive in the way they expect. It rarely comes as a voice from the heavens, but more often as restlessness, curiosity, or a pull toward something greater. The world trains people to sleep through their calling, to prioritize comfort over purpose, business over reflection. But when God calls you in those early hours, He is asking for your attention, not your perfection. He is not looking for flawless people. He is looking for willing hearts. Those who rise in response begin to walk a path that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary, not by talent but by obedience. Answering the call requires courage because it often comes wrapped in uncertainty. When the divine calls, it rarely presents the entire map, it gives only the next step. This is where faith becomes the compass. To respond is to trust that the one who calls you has already prepared the way ahead. Many people sense their calling but hesitate, waiting for signs, validation, or proof. But revelation follows response. The call is not confirmed by certainty, it is confirmed by movement. The moment you act, the path begins to unfold. Those who respond in the stillness of dawn are not just praying, they are preparing. They are aligning themselves with a destiny that will demand more of them, but also give more in return. Every calling comes with an assignment, and every assignment requires transformation. When you rise to meet that call, you are not simply waking up physically, you are awakening spiritually. You begin to shed the layers of fear, doubt, and limitation that once confined you. The divine does not call you to what you already are. It calls you to what you can become. In this transformation, pain often becomes a teacher, silence becomes a sanctuary, and persistence becomes a weapon. You start to realize that the call is not about status or recognition. It is about service and alignment. The calling is God's way of turning your potential into purpose. When you consistently respond to this inner voice, your awareness heightens. You start to see the connection between your thoughts, your actions, and the unfolding of divine timing. Coincidences become confirmations, and obstacles become opportunities for growth. Life stops feeling random, and everything begins to take shape with meaning. Those who rise in response to the divine call experience an expansion of understanding. They begin to interpret life, not as a sequence of accidents, but as a symphony of intention. You recognize that nothing in your life is wasted. Every moment is preparation for what is coming. Those who ignore the call often do so out of fear or fatigue. Yet in doing so, they miss the dialogue that could have shaped their destiny. The hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. are sacred not because of the time itself, but because of the openness they offer. The world's silence makes it easier to hear what your spirit has been trying to tell you all along. When you turn away, you delay your own growth. When you answer, you accelerate it. The divine does not punish those who sleep through the call. It waits patiently, continuing to whisper until the soul is ready. But when you finally respond, heaven rejoices, for a co-creator has awakened. Responding to your calling does not mean your path will be free of trials. In fact, it often brings new challenges. Yet, those challenges come with divine assistance. Every step you take in obedience draws more strength, more insight, and more divine favor into your life. The more you trust, the more you are trusted with greater assignments. This is the mystery of spiritual growth. Obedience multiplies opportunity. You begin to realize that the divine does not choose the qualified, it qualifies those who choose to answer. Each act of faith, each moment of surrender, each silent yes, shapes you into a vessel capable of carrying greater purpose. Partnership with the divine begins when you stop seeing your calling as a burden and start recognizing it as an invitation. The early morning call is not about what God wants from you. It is about what He wants for you. Clarity, strength, and expansion. Those who answer become instruments of light in a world often blinded by distraction. Their presence carries peace, their words carry power, and their actions carry purpose. They no longer live by reaction but by revelation. They move not in haste but in harmony. When the divine calls between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it is because your spirit is ready for deeper conversation. Those who answer step into partnership with creation itself, a dance between heaven's intention and human willingness. In that sacred exchange, life ceases to be ordinary. Each dawn becomes a meeting point between destiny and devotion, between purpose and power. And those who continue to rise in response are transformed into living messages. Proof that when a soul listens, heaven speaks, and when heaven speaks, the world changes.